ஆடியோ கேபிள் எடுத்துறாங்க ஃபோன் பண்றாங்க பார்கோட் போட்டுருவா இப்படி போட்டுனா ஆடியோ கிராக் ஆகும் வரிசையாக போகும். ஆமாண்ணே முறிங்க என்னை எடுக்க விட்டாங்கண்ணே. இல்லை அவங்க இருந்தாலும் கஷ்டம்ண்ணே, பாவம் அவங்க சமாளிக்க முடியாது. நல்ல வேலை வந்து மேனேஜ் பண்ணி எடுத்து அடுத்த காலில் செட் பண்ணிட்டு வேறு காலில் வந்தாச்சு. இப்போ அவங்க வந்துட்டு போயிட்டாங்க. ஆமாம் எடுத்துகிட்டு வந்தேன். சரிண்ணே வாங்கிட்டு ஃபோன் பண்ண சரி ரைட் ஓகே. எவ்வளோ ஆகணும்? சரி ரைட் 3 வாங்க. சரி
அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். வெல்கம் பேக்.
வீடியோ கேமரா பிடிடா.
Once again we welcome all the dignitaries and students and research scholars. Now we are starting the sessions. First session First session will be led by Professor V. Selvakumar of Tamil University. Sir will be introducing all the scholars of this session.
Good morning to you all. I am indeed happy to be here as part of this Muthamizh Arignar Kalaignar's Centenary years seminar, national seminar, Reflections on Cultural Development and Archaeological Perspective. I will not take much of your time because we have just 1 hour from 12:30 to 1:30 before lunch. We will have 4 papers. In this session, we will have a total number of 6 papers. Rama, Krishna, Sipaty and Dr. Arjun, they are not here. Instead of their papers, Dr. Thiru Satyamurthy will present, and also my paper will be shifted here. So I request the speakers to come onto the dais so that we will stand and take a group photograph and then move on to the presentation. Dr. Shanti Pappu, Dr. Kumar Akhilesh, Dr. Jayendra Joglekar, Dr. Thiru Arun Kumar and Thiru Satyamurthy and myself will take a group photo and then we go on to the presentation. Arun Kumar and Satyamurthy. Yeah. Arun Kumar is not there. Okay, we'll just take a group photo.
Sir, lighter side. Ma'am, sit ma'am. அப்படியே வெயிட் பண்ணுங்க சார். Okay.
Thank you. We just wanted to save time so that we did not put chairs and sit, and we wanted to listen to the speakers. The first paper is by Dr. Shanti Pappu and Dr. Kumar Akhilesh, who do not need much introduction because Dr. Shanti Pappu and Kumar Akhilesh, their important work has placed history of Tamilnadu back in 1.5 million years ago, and also they have made important contribution in publishing both in nature and science journals, and also they have done important work in terms of middle Palaeolithic culture of Palar Valley. In addition to that, they have been training people across India and also world on lithic studies, experimental archaeology, culture awareness program. I think it is very important, their contribution of Sarma's Center for Heritage Studies and Education. They have done important contribution, and it is much appreciated, and the government and so many agencies have appreciated the work. So I will not take much time. So I invite Dr. Shanti Pappu and Dr. Kumar Akhilesh to present their first paper, Stone Tools, Strategies and Sustainable Conservation Planning for the Future of Prehistoric Research in Tamil Nadu. 15 minutes for each speakers. Thank you. We need to end up with 12 minutes. Yeah. 12 minutes and 3 minutes.
Go quickly, please.
Right?
So firstly, thank you very much for inviting us here. We are really delighted to present here. And my talk and Dr. Akilesh's talk next is in sort of continuum. And I'd like to talk about planning. And the slide.
Light off பண்ணிக்கலாமா?
Light off. Da amathu. Dey onnu therla.
So the first slide actually what I want to say is very simple. Even as I'm speaking, all of us know that there is massive destruction. Even as I'm speaking, then all of us know there is massive destruction of prehistoric and other sites going on all over the country. This is because of infrastructure development, and in the case of prehistory, this is more so because many lack of sometimes awareness of what these prehistoric sites look like. In planning and in structuring our research so that there is something left for the future generations. So this is the basic point of the talk. Well-defined problems, and this is very essential. Otherwise, a lot of our energy gets completely dissipated. So, this is the first point. The second point is moving beyond discovery and documentation. So, we know already that wonderful work has been done by many of the people in this room here in discovering the sites and in documenting that, and that is the fundamental beginning. But now the time has come for holistic approaches to understand processes rather than antiquity documentation. Okay? So, I have given the paper, it is published in the book, I think. So, what we require, as was said in the morning on the stage also, interdisciplinary problem-oriented regional studies, issues related to nomenclature, how do we call things, how do we classify cultural phases and tools, chronology, paleoenvironments, and we are sitting here in the Center for Bioanthropology and Ancient DNA, so that is essential, and residue and other proxies, experimental and ethnoarchaeology, and heritage management. Okay, so I have lovely slides, but I can show them to you later. I'll just carry on. So we are trying to look, at least I'm only going to talk about prehistory, and we are going to look at multiple worlds of hominids. Okay, so major questions of interest. These can vary at different scales. For example, in our own team, we have been looking at issues related to dispersals, migration, when, how, why did this occur, culture change, transitions and concurrence, technological strategies, paleoenvironments, chronology and cognitive evolution. But at the same time, in addition to looking at these big issues, there can also be small questions, local issues, local things of importance which we can focus on, technological niches, biological niches, social, emotional, aesthetic aspects of prehistory, ecological niches, and other questions of that nature, ultimately looking at not only the big picture, but also of the individual. So the first major point which we need to look at is issues in nomenclatures. What do we call our different cultural phases, and how do we look at it in terms of origin, evolution, and the nature of change? This is very, very important because many times we use different terminologies based on what we find in the field, say lower, middle, upper, Mesolithic, or late Paleolithic, or even Neolithic, and sometimes we feel that we are speaking about the same thing, but we are not. We are speaking about different things. So, in my presentation, I got some slides describing that, but never mind. Okay. So, for example, there has been a lot of debate as regards the use of the term Upper Paleolithic versus Mesolithic. Now, as we know, more and more dates are coming out of India and Sri Lanka, showing that the technology of making these small blades and microliths and other artifacts of that nature go back to almost 46 or perhaps even 50,000 years old. In that case, when we see a surface site with these small blades, bladelets, microliths, what do we call them? Which cultural phase do we assign them to in the absence of dates? As yet, for Tamil Nadu at least, we do not have a good idea of the technological evolution of many of these cultures, and sometimes this leads to some problems. Similarly, there has been a focus on moving away from the terms Upper and Mesolithic and classifying it as Late Paleolithic. So, what term are we going to use? There's no consensus right now, and it's time we all sit together and decide for ourselves. What is the terminology we want to look at? I was at an NLA meeting, and there is a doubt in some cases where you have hand axes with a beaver like tranchet blue at the end, or some other unique features, or artifacts like this, the small flake wool component of the waste product, for which there is a lot of confusion in terminology, giving it a name. And it is time that in addition to giving it a name, we move towards looking at the entire assemblage as a whole, technologically speaking. So we don't worry sometimes too much about what we call things, but look at how these things fit into the big picture of what was going on at that particular site. Like this is what the approach at least which we are using in our center. So it's sort of thinking differently about tools which we have always looked at. Similarly, question of Acheulean origin and evolution is something which we don't know. We do not know as yet whether there is anything which is before the Acheulean in India, and I don't think we should give up on this question. We should not say that it doesn't exist, but we should start thinking about questions related to that. What do we mean by transitions? We use this term a lot, and it's generally looked at technologically, but we need to think much more when we see assemblages with features that come from multiple, say hand axes with some points or level or something like that. We need to think, whatever it is, much more about the questions of transitions in Tamil Nadu. Similarly, transitions to the late Paleolithic and the evolution of these late and microlithic, we know very well all these scaly sites, but there are many more sites, that's Punjaram for example, where you have much older evidence of some changes going on here locally. So these are things which we are exploring in our institute, and these are big questions for everyone. The Neolithic. This is a big question. I'm very glad Dr. Parandaman is here because I want to speak about his work. And we traditionally classify everything as Neolithic based on the presence of polished stone sets. But the Neolithic is much more than that. And we have to start thinking of various variables by which we can look at a community, and whether we call it Neolithic or not, think about what is the change to agro-pastoral modes of life which is going on. Maybe the association with megaliths, with megalithic, with black and red ware, and other issues. And this holistic interpretation of diverse sites and landscapes, focusing on behavior is really, really very important. So in whether it's a Paleolithic landscape, I won't say site because studying one site is meaningless. You have to look at landscapes of sites, and this is what we have to focus on. Whether it is looking at these two sites, for example, in the context of all other yellow dots which are on other sites. So this is how you bring up different aspects of behavior, organization of movement across the landscape, assemblage composition variability, and there you get true pictures of what these early hominins were trying to do across these landscapes in Tamil Nadu. Lithics. Again, as I said, moving beyond typology to deconstructing them in multiple ways. So I won't go into the details, but this is what we are trying to do, not just call it a hand axe. We have 100 hand axes, so what? It has no meaning. What do these mean in terms of how each particular hand axe was made? You can see here, Akhilesh will talk more about the deconstruction of these tools, and that is what is really interesting. Similarly, when you are looking at the Neolithic, and this is a joint project with the Tamil Nadu department, the correlation of these cells with different types of sites is becoming more and more important. And this slide is courtesy Parandaman and his colleagues with the wonderful excavations at Budinatam, which is a very, very unique site, I feel, because it is totally different from what we normally find. It has cells, but it has other elements of a later time period. So, to try to understand what processes were going on in this small little community, it's not a very big site, it is not rich in antiquities, but antiquities counts do not matter. This holistic approach towards understanding sites which are small, rich in fauna, rich in other things, is, I think, a very unique approach taken by the State Department, and I wish them all the success in similar work. How do we fit into the global picture? So whether it's India or globally, Tamil Nadu is now playing a very important role in determining questions of migration, whether it is in the historical period, population movements, which other scholars are going to talk about. But for us, we are concerned with these three main migratory routes, and many of our work seems to challenge the conventional notions. So, as I said, we can't make any huge statement right now. The sample size is very small. We need many, many more samples. But for now, these are questions to think about whenever we are working at any site. And again, the absence of cultural phases across Tamil Nadu is very important. Is it just because of cultural behavior? Is it geomorphology that the sediments are not preserved, or is it lack of survey? So these things are being filled in right now, for which time becomes of essence. So at Athirampakam, we have built up this chronology ranging from around 1.7 million years to around 72,000 years through various methods of dating. And we are doing the same at the other sites we are working on. Results have not yet come. But what is important, not only does it help us think about cultural issues, but I will stress that sometimes there is a discrepancy between dates given by geologists and dates and the correlation with archaeological data, especially in Teri area. So that's what we are trying to take up right now and trying to bridge this gap. So what do we need? We need large-scale efforts to date using multiple methods, critically evaluate all our previous dates, and I would emphasize that the Tamil Nadu government, I would request to set up a geochronological unit specifically for archaeology in the state, because with the wonderful data coming out, I think this would be very useful for everybody. Paleoenvironments, geomorphology and site formation. Before we talk about culture, we should understand how sites are formed. What are the fluvial, aeolian, other processes leading to the deposition of tools and other features in a particular place? And when we speak of environment, whatever we are reconstructing, this is from Athirampakam again, whatever we are reconstructing must have connotation for hominin behavior. What does this environmental change mean? Sometimes the data resolution is very low, we cannot draw one-to-one line. But nevertheless, these are questions we must address. Lastly, constant updating our technological use, which I know the Tamil Nadu government has been using extensively at their excavations, whether it's satellite remote sensing, drones, field surveys, predictive modeling, which we have used very effectively to build models where we can find sites before they are destroyed. So this saves a lot of time and energy. Or we have used just now GPR for prehistory. Generally GPR is used for monuments, but you can use it for prehistoric sites to pick up sediments of interest. And new studies of stone tools, which Akhilesh will talk about, and very important, which Dr. Prachi is doing in our lab, 3D modeling of sites and artifacts, and not only stopping at modeling, but moving from there to use the model and the 3D shape files to do some statistical analysis. And microwave residue and all, which Dr. Akhilesh will speak about. Experimental and ethnoarchaeology, with Akhilesh and Jayendra will talk, so I won't waste time here. And lastly, heritage management. So these sites are very fragile, prehistoric sites. They're not like mounds, they're not like monument sites, big sites or historical sites. And if you want to encourage tourism at these sites, there are many issues in India, especially footfall, uncontrolled tourism, unplanned infrastructure, collection of artifacts, major problem. Everyone goes to sites and say, I will pick up Ore Tulna, Ore bead. But on the Ore bead pickup from site at the end. So this must be stopped. So we worked with ISRO and to actually map impacts at all the sites. These are only prehistoric sites all over northern Tamil Nadu, and then suggested some remedies which are site specific. Not all sites can be conserved, it's not practical, but one or two can be, and in that case it should be site specific conservation methods. We can pick from many methods used abroad at prehistoric sites, but sometimes the methods used at, say, that's Olduvai, for example, complete block of anyone entering, except the whole area, except at the museum, or Terramata, or all of this, many sites are there. Which method to use in India? Plus, we should not use these methods blindly. We should adopt them to the Indian context. So, site museums, I think, a brilliant idea, but they are not to be set up at the site, little bit away, just like Pundi Museum. It's somewhere near there. These are wonderful museums which attract a lot of footfall. Plus, in district collectors' office complexes, some posters about prehistory in addition to others. Replicas at local government schools, This will help in creating massive awareness, and that is the last point. Capacity building skills for students, for faculty. This is from some students who we recently took to sites. Online hybrid communication, and of course hands-on with children and teachers. And as was said by many speakers in the morning, truly multidisciplinary. So our own project has so many scholars. Even though I'm only talking, there are many scholars who contributed to the points in this talk. So I'm very grateful to all of them, and of course to the funding agencies and to those who give us licenses to work. Thank you.
கொஞ்சம் ஆடிட்டீங்கன்னா லைட் அவங்க டியூப் லைட் மட்டும் போடுங்க அவங்க ஃபேஸ் மாதிரி
Yes, sir. 1.7. About 1.5. Yes.
Okay. Now, my question is, does it mean that the Homo erectus simply continued and then Homo sapiens appeared, or?
Yeah, probably, you're right. See, as far as Acheulean is concerned, we know it's Homo erectus. So that ends around 1 million. After that, we have another cultural phase, an early middle to a middle Paleolithic, in which definitely it's another species. It's no longer Homo erectus, but which species we are not sure, because there are multiple species who could have made that tool at that particular time span.
The thing is whether the species came in or evolved.
I think they came in. Yeah. Okay.
I think you
Thank
can
you.
discuss later because during the lunch time, because we are running short of time. Next, I invite Kumar and Akhilesh to take this discussion.
So, good afternoon everybody, and first of all I would like to thank the organizing committee for giving us this wonderful opportunity to share our research and get some feedback so that we can improve upon. And thank you, Prof. Shanti. You have set the foundation for my talk. So I'm going to talk about the experimental studies in prehistoric archaeology, and specifically replicating the hand axes, the cleavers, the other large flake tools. And these are really important because, as he said, and we firmly believe that now the time has come that we must move from the typological studies. We should look at the tool in a much more holistic manner. Tool cannot be looked at in terms of only tool. We need to look at the tools in terms of many more aspects of it, which is what I'm going to talk about. So let me come straight to the point. These are the 3 points which I will be talking. The experimental protocol which we have designed for our work, then the diverse biphase reduction strategies, and some of the results or some of the methods what we have implied in the user studies. The archaeological data which I am going to refer is from these 2 sites. One is the Adram, which has become very famous because it has yielded a date of very early Acheulean plus a middle Paleolithic. We got it published luckily in Science and Nature. And the other very important site, which is equally important as far as typology and technology goes, that is the site of Centenary and Palar. So the archaeology from these 2 sites will be under investigation for this particular talk. So the aim of this talk is to analyze the archaeological material in great detail, then design the experiment based on those archaeological methods. It's not like that you just make a hand axe, or you just make a cleaver, or you just make a scrapper. It has no meaning. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, unless you study your own material and based on that you design your experiments. Plus, you need to do that on your raw material. I'll give you a simple example. There are tons and tons of video on, say, making a hand axe on flint, which is, and most of our hand axes are either on quartzitic sandstone, or sometimes limestone. So the raw material also plays a very important role. So we must do the experiment on the raw material where our lithics are available. Then obviously the exclusion of the entire product, documentation is very key. It's a very boring, time consuming, but it has to be done in a great detail. And definitely they exploring the alternate methods. It's not like that what I have said and what I have produced, that is the last word. We must look at with different colleagues how they are coming out also with the same conclusion or some different conclusion. So the ultimate aim is to look at the behavior by looking at this one too. And in India, especially when you are looking at the early cultures, lower middle, we don't have any bones, we don't have other things. But what we are very lucky that we have tons and tons of lithics. And even the lithics is much better than even Moldovan. I have been working in the site in Moldovan, and if you see there are lots of fossils. But our lithic collection is much better than them. So it's our duty, it's our responsibility, it's our job to extract as much as we can extract from the lithics. So that's why the experimental has to be done in a great details. That's what we are doing in our center, and we have been focusing lots on the experimental, be it lower Palaeolithic. Now we are with the State Department. We are also replicating the Neoliths, working on that, looking at the various aspects of that as well. So now let's look at the, so as I said, the very structured experimental protocol was put in place, right from sourcing the raw material to the reduction of the large flakes, using them into making them into different kinds of tools, as well as documentation at each stages. So as I said earlier, the selection of raw material was very crucial. At that time, you have quartzite, quadratic sandstone was basically used in both our sites. And the hammerstones, these are also very crucial. Nowadays, if you look at the YouTube videos, you will not see many videos which has been percussion was used like a hammer. They use copper whopper. I feel that that's also not the exact way to go about it when you are doing it scientifically, because hammerstone also plays a very crucial role. So we have done a documentation before use of the hammerstone, during the use, after use, the breakage pattern, the pattern what you get while napping. So all these were documented, and the database of hammerstone was also being created at our center. And of course, this we talk about the tool use all the time. That this was used for hunting, this was used for some X purpose, this was used for some Y. What are the proof actually? So for that reason, we need to look at the tool under the high-powered microscope or on a macroscope manner, so that we can reach to certain conclusion about it. Again, the lots and lots of data is available on flint, but very few data is available on quartz, quartzite, sandstone, or any other material which is available in India, especially for the lower Paleolithic time period. So we are working to create the database as well here. So this brings me the three things which I am going to talk about. One is the production of the large flake, because that is the basis for the sugar in India. And then we talk about a little bit about the hand axis, and the entire focus will be mostly on the cleaver. So for the production of the large flakes, so the boulders and large copies were selected from the source region in the Archaeological region. We should never do the experiment at the site or nearby the site, otherwise we will be creating many more sites, right? So we procured all this and we brought to our center, and there are different ways of producing I don't know why it's not working. The video is not working as usual. Okay, so it's just a, so there are many ways by which you produce a large flake. As you can see here, I have looked at some of them, bifacial, Bombay ball, level, slicing, double. All the techniques were employed to get these large flakes, as you can see here. And these large flakes were ultimately made into hand axes, cleavers, large cutting tools. So like we have also analyzed the hand axe of the site, Athrambakam and the Centenary, and we try to replicate them. These are the replicated material, and those are the detailed analysis done at the archaeological site. We looked at the generation, we looked at the different ways by which it was made, what kind of hammer stones were used. But I will not talk much about this because the focus is mostly on my experiment on the cleavers. And at Atharambagam, the cleavers, we have done about 5-6 trenches. In all the trenches, we have the evidence of cleaver, as you can see here. And the number of cleaver is much less in this part of the country. When you go north, you have much better. Ours is 1:4 ratio, very less cleaver. But then, nonetheless, even as we have the less cleavers, our variability is quite high in the cleaver as well. So, if you look at here, we have the different types of cleaver, parallel sided. Some of them are obliquely struck, some of them are divergent. And then this delineation is also a very, very important technological thing when we are looking at the cleaver, because that affects how the cleaver was made, and it also affects the efficiency of the cleaver. And this delineation cuts across the different types of cleavers which I am going to talk about. Then the preferred length here, preferred size of the cleaver, you can see the variation is there, but there was a preference of about 13 to 14 centimeter cleaver at the site. Okay. So if you examine the cleaver technology at the site, those who are familiar with the literature here, especially those who are the prehistorians, you can see here this is comparable with the Tixia type 0, what we call Atharambagam type 1, where the entire cortex is there on the dorsal side, the ventral side splits the cortex side, and you create the cleaver edge. So that is the Tixia type 1. Then you have the type 2, where some amount of preparation is there, but not, you can't call this Levalva or the Chinky type of cleaver, but some sort of preparation is there, you can see based on the dorsal fixed cut pattern, and then again the ventral side meets and it creates the your cleaver working edge. This is the type 2. Then there's very interesting cleaver at Atharambagam, where what they have done, they have taken a large flake, and the flake has been sliced in the middle, and then they shaped it, the lateral modification has been done, so that you get a very good working edge, divergent working edge. This is not been seen in most of the places, this is specific to Atharambagam. And of course the Combeva cleaver. Combeva is a very, very specialized technique. We know that you produce a flake from a flake, which is quite difficult, and especially the production of a large Combeva flake is even much more difficult. So at Atharambagam, at this point of time, they were very, very proficient about the Combeva cleavers. They had beautiful Combeva flakes, Combeva cleavers. Perhaps the hand axes also were made on one of the Combeva flake. So they were very proficient in Combeva flakes, which is very, very important technique here. So this was the technique, and this just summarizes you the entire cleaver experiment, cleaver technology at Atharambagam, what I just spoke. So what I did, so here also we devised a protocol for this cleaver experimentation. We have two types of cleaver. One is the predetermined edge cleaver, and the other is also the tranchant blow, when you actually create the edge, which is not that so much in the at Atharambagam. Most of the Atharambagam are on the predetermined, but at the new site we have quite a number on a tranchant blow, which is actually you create the edge, you make something bifacially flake and then you create the edge, so which is very, very difficult sometimes. So for that we did experimentation. So obviously, you know, you follow a whole lot of protocol, they take the measurements, and the way sometimes it is quite heavy, 25 kilos, produce a large flake. Some of the large flake is very, very useful, and make them into a cleaver. It's not like that all the large flake what you produce, you can make the cleaver out of that. So again, there is a lot of selection of raw material, a lot of selection of the flake blind goes on while you are making something of this magnitude. So like here you can see one of the cleaver made by me. Here, that's the result. And the documentation, we film with 2-3 cameras, because we are not going to stop at this level documentation. We are going to use it for some other purpose as well. This entire video, entire audio, and entire still photographs for other thing. And you can see the, one of the type 1 type of cleaver being produced here by me. These are again the techniques what I discussed. So here this is the type 1, where you can see the large boulder. Opening of a large boulder is very, very difficult sometimes, and especially if it is rounded, it makes life very difficult. So sometimes you have to wedge them in the ground. So that's what I did. In this case, I wedged them in the ground, hit it with a very large hammer, and split the cobble into two halves. And these halves were further flaked into, made into a cleaver flake, and then they were made into a cleaver. Same like experimental 2, I mean the type 2 cleaver, where you used one of the split boulder and made the flake out of that, and ultimately you made the cleaver from there. This is the third type, where I spoke about the splitting of the large flake. As you can see here, the large flake in the middle, where you can see the arrow being split, and then you got the cleaver shape. And of course the Commemoration cleaver. So you produce a large flake that has to have a large enough, it has to have a good mass so that you can take out another large flake, and that large flake you will be shaped into a cleaver. So these all 4 methods were replicated. You can see here the small one. This side is the experimental one, the fresh looking one, and that's the archaeological one. And from this size of flake, Commemoration flake you produce, and then we have also replicated the large Commemoration cleaver as well. Plus the debitage, while shaping this, while making the flake, as well as when you convert the flake into a biface, either a hand axe or cleaver, that gives you an immense amount of data actually. And hand axes produces lots and lots of data, whereas cleaver doesn't produce, because you are only looking at the lateral modification, lateral shaping. So this recording is also in progress, and we are not only left at the recording stage, we are also looking at the detailed scar pattern, what kind of striking platform you are getting, how the breakage is happening. So entire technology we are trying to understand through the debitage as well for this. And these are some of the examples of the cleaver produced by me. This is the some of the predetermined cleaver, another sets of predetermined cleaver. And then you have this, these are the tranchet blow, you can see here. So some of these. So in nutshell, this is the technology, what I spoke just now. So you have the large boulders, that boulders were split into set of cores. And from that core, you are able to knock off large flake, and large flake is being again made into different kinds of cleavers. So significance of this I am going to talk little later, but let me finish the other aspect of it, the use of the cleaver. This is also a very, very crucial. We have tons and tons of cleaver. Normally people think this is very good for chopping something. Do you have the evidence of that or not? Whether this is a good thing to chop a tree with the cleaver, or I just need some chopping tool that can do my better job than the cleaver. Why do I care so much about the cleaver to make the cleaver and then do this? So to check sets of activities, we also did lots and lots of activities on these experimental cleavers, like chopping wood, scraping, cutting meat, chopping long bones, and what kind of evidence ultimately we are getting on the tool. So obviously we have to have the data pre-use. So we had the high power photography, we have made the mold of this, and then the post-use, what kind of fracture we are getting from this. So like this is the pre-use, you can see the edge has been damaged. Sometimes it is so deceptive, you feel like they have actually retouched the edge, but that's not the case. So we are working with the CNA, Spain, and they are also looking at it, and we are trying to get some idea what happens. Yeah, I'm almost done. So they are all, so we are trying to look at the edge and see the wear and tear pattern, what is happening at the cleaver edge, and obviously that was at the microscopic level, and now we look at the microscopic level as well. So pre-use we make the cast, and then after use also we are making the cast. The cast will be studied by somebody else. That will be a blind test kind of thing. The experimental tools is going to be studied by me under the microscope, and then we come up with the with some conclusion. And like here, we are already looking at some of the cast in Spain, and see what kind of database we are able to generate with this, and then ultimately look at the actual cleaver under the microscope and see if we are getting any pattern out of this. So that was as far as use wear is concerned. So what I am looking at cleaver here is, when we talk about cleaver, we say this is type 0, this is 1, this is 2, this is level 1. But I see this as a continuum. So you have a large boulder, you are shaping that boulder. Some of the pieces can be used for the the type 1, and then you flake a little bit more, then you will get into the type 2. Yes, definitely if you are going to make a level work lever, level of flake lever, then definitely it requires much more planning. But definitely 0, 1, 2 type is definitely a continuum what I'm seeing here as well. And definitely a very, very distinct pattern here at Atrampatam, where you are slicing the flake and making them into a cleaver and a Combewa cleaver. So definitely the experimental study has helped us in understand the site in a much more holistic way. Like you can see here, like at Atrampatam at a Schulian level, we don't have a single large port. You can produce a large flake. So definitely these large flakes were produced somewhere, they were brought to the site, they were used, they were discarded, and much later we find them and try to reconstruct the past. And then tons and tons of devitage we are seeing here. So that devitage is also comparable with your biface, whether it comes from the biface reduction or from a cleaver reduction. That also you can do with the experiment. I'm not saying that the experiment is the final word, but it definitely takes you to step closer to the reality, I guess. And that's what we are seeking, all of us are seeking here. So thank you so much for inviting us. These are the collaborators that we are working with, and funding agencies, thanks to the Archaeological Survey of India, granting us the permit, and the constant support of the State Department. You know, they stood behind us for the last 25 years. I'm really, really very thankful to them that they stood behind us and supported us always. Thank you so much for your patience. I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. If there are any questions, 1 or 2 questions we can take.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, you can discuss because we are running short of time, and I think it's a very excellent work where you have brought in both Dr. Shanti and Dr. Akhilesh brought in experimental archaeology, behavioral archaeology, and problem-oriented research. Thank you, Dr. Akhilesh. Next, I invite Dr. Jayendra Joglekar to make his presentation on Palaeolithic cultures in the Deccan Upland, Retrospect and Prospect. Jayendra Joglekar completed his PhD from Deccan College. He needs no more introduction because the college itself tells you a lot about his work, and he has been working in the Deccan area, so he will be presenting his presentation. 15 minutes.
Thank you so much.
12 plus.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank the organizers for allowing me to present my research here. We will be talking about Paleolithic cultures in Upland Deccan, especially Acheulean, and the absence of Middle Paleolithic with basalt, or rare presence of Middle Paleolithic with basalt. So I will be talking about that, the research studies, and will not give much background, I will show just 2-3 slides and just talk about my work in last 7-8 years. First.
PPT, our comments.
Yeah. So basically, I will be talking about the Paleolithic cultures in the Upland Deccan. So this Deccan region, especially Maharashtra region, has Deccan basalt formation. So basalt is the basic geological formation in this region. So brief background about this region, Paleolithic cultures, is that Paleolithic cultural studies in this region started from post 1940s. So the research history of this region is around 70 to 80 years. So in this 70 to 80 years, what has been observed that during the Acheulean culture, basalt was widely used, while it has been suggested over the years that during the Middle Paleolithic or then later Paleolithic cultural phases, siliceous material like chert, chalcedony has been used. Is it visible? I think it's visible. So basic background about this region is basalt formations, which are Western Ghats, pedimental formations. There are different types of rivers like autochthonous, allochthonous. then ungraded bedrock channels are there, incised meanders are. This type of environmental situation and geomorphological situation is unique to this region. So it cannot be compared to, say, about Narmada Valley or Atirampaka, this region. So this is unique, different geomorphological foundation. So it has to be looked at in a different way. The sediment deposits are hardly, rarely exceeding 20 meters in these areas, in any of the river valleys. Channel gravels basically is a mixed deposit of older and younger gravel. So these gravel formations within the channel are largely a combination of younger and older gravels, and often you find Paleolithic artifacts in this exposed gravel. So basically these are secondary sites, but these are also important. So it shows that there was some human activity in these regions. So basic point of view is what we will take that during earliest times it was said that this region was not occupied by the Paleolithic people, as this raw material was not suitable. It was suggested that time. Then partial refutation came in 1940s to 70s, when number of sites were found in Godavari, Pravara and Bhima basin, sites such as Gangapur, Nevasa. Then later on in 1980s, Bori, Morgaon, Yedurwadi, such sites were discovered and then later on studied. Then another Purana basin model was suggested by Professor Kori Setter. He suggested that some of the Deccan tribe region or Upland Deccan region is a peripheral area and not the core area for Paleolithic occupations. And in 1986 and 89, then again these sites have proper Archaeological sites with only basalt tools. There are no other raw materials. So basically there is no dorite dike or such, so which is available in sites such as Bori. So proper Archaeological tools on basalt has been also found in these specifically sites. This all majority of this region is semi-arid region. So it was suggested that sub-humid region was not occupied, probably not occupied or very rarely occupied by the early hominins. So what is the Paleolithic scene? Just I have mentioned about Gangapur, Nevasa, Chilki, Bori, Morgaon. So you can see about 70-80 years of research, and only we have 5-6 sites which have been worked properly and studied quite well. Some of the sites are semi-primary, they are in cemented gravels, loose gravels, and these sites are absolutely or relatively dated to late early Pleistocene and middle Pleistocene. So this is the time period in which these Paleolithic Assyrian sites have been dated. Then Middle Paleolithic. About Middle Paleolithic is a major problem in this Upland Deccan region. You have siliceous material Middle Paleolithic sites, but what was the situation from basalt? Did the raw material shift to gradual or it was drastic? So this is the point I have been trying to look now. And there are some examples or some instances where Middle Paleolithic with on basalt has been reported from Tapi basin, 2-3 sites are there, and one site in Ranjani in Bhima basin. So these are the only sites known with proper Middle Paleolithic and basalt. So it has been earlier hypothesized that siliceous material was preferred during the Middle Paleolithic. So was there any transition or move from Assyrian to Middle Paleolithic in this region? I am trying to look into that. So this is just to show some what kind of Assyrian things are there in basaltic region, and this is just to show what kind of basalt Middle Paleolithic what has been claimed. These kind of things have been reported from Raigad from Tapi on the right, and in the left Ranjani from Bhima basin. So what are the issues which I am either acknowledging or addressing? So these kinds of issues I am facing, especially in Upland Deccan region, basaltic region, that difficulty in identification of artifacts on basalt, especially in secondary channel gravel context. Why we have so less sites? Because they have not been identified. Basically, the artifacts could not have been identified. So in rolled context, upgraded context, some of the sites they are buried, and non-diagnostic artifacts. So this is the major issues about the identification. Then again, it was suggested that older sediment like early and middle Pleistocene sediments are not absent, are basically absent or not been found in this region. Most of the sediments whatever are there are late Pleistocene sediments. So because of this reason, artifacts are rarely found in this some of these areas. Then biased or prejudiced, like it was suggested that you should not go in this region, that there will be no sites. There are no sites previously reported. So why waste your time? So this is not the way we should look at it. We should go properly and survey the region minutely. Then we can find some sites or some artifacts, some thing we can find. Then limited surveys or re-investigations are also in limited manner. Specific, as I mentioned, some 5-6 sites are there, and most of the work has been done on these 5-6 sites. So we have to expand in this region and try to look at more sites. And then like Shanti ma'am and Akhilesh sir has already mentioned it, the perspective, global perspectives have changed. Even in Indian context, we have now different scenarios coming up. So Paleolithic understanding has also improved. So we have to look this region also has to be looked in different manner. Then different models and environmental situations, raw material determination has to be also considered, especially in this region. And we have to acknowledge that each region has different challenges. So we have to look in each region accordingly. We have to address the issues according to that region. So what are the present research goals? What I have been working on last 8 to 10 years is trying to survey some lesser known, lesser studied electrons and electrons rivers in this region, like Upper Krishna Basin, which was my PhD topic. Shanti ma'am was my examiner. So 5 years I worked on this Upper Krishna Basin. Then recently in last 2-3 years I have been working on Sina Basin, which is a tributary of Bhima, and Man also another river which is a tributary of Bhima, and Manjara River, which is famous for its fossils and dated fossils, which is a tributary of Godavari. And basic intention was to identify some Palaeolithic localities if there are some Palaeolithic markers, Acheulean or Middle Paleolithic, mostly whatever there is in basalt, and trying to look at that. What is the nature of this Paleolithic cultural assemblages, what is the affiliation, if there is continuity or change, or what are the transition phases, if there are any. And trying to, most of the sites I know that most of the sites have been disturbed context, so trying to address those with channel gravel sites. And then basalt, if there are Acheulean or Middle Paleolithic, to check and test it. And then this most of this region is semi-arid landscape. Early human adaptation to check that paleometric interpretation more has to be done, and opening up new areas for research. This is the main intention. Upper Krishna Basin is basically sub-humid. Other all regions are semi-arid landscape. So these are the basic 4 areas which have been worked. That 7 number, that is the Upper Krishna Basin. Then our river Man is there. That is still ongoing work which has been working, and Sina Basin is there, and Manjara River Basin. So that is the study area which I have been working. Then Upper Krishna Basin, just I would like to give a brief background that in this region earlier only 3 sites were reported. The Yadurwadi site is there, but on the upper basin, upper part of the river, only 3 sites were reported with 7 or 8 artifacts. So it was suggested by Dr. R.S. Pappu that this region was rarely occupied by early hominins, and probable reasons were given that dense vegetation was there, rock was not suitable, heavy rainfall and vegetation was there. So these kinds of reasons were given, and it was suggested that mostly quadratic area, Kalaignar Basin, was occupied. So during my survey, I could identify more than 7-8 sites, and about 300 artifacts were collected for sampling, and most of the sites are in secondary context, so that is not an issue. Then these kinds of contexts have been observed. Channel gravel bars are there from which Acheulean artifacts were collected. Then another conglomerate or cemented gravel context is also there, from where some large flakes and Acheulean artifacts were collected. Then this cobbly rubble context above the bedrock capping, that has also been observed. And then another famous site is of Mainoli, where cemented gravel is there in the lower basin, which is from where Acheulean artifacts are collected. And this cemented gravel is being eroded by the river over the years, and these second artifacts have been transported to the loose channel gravel. So these kinds of large boulders or giant blocks were exported for removal of large flakes. This is just to show the example. These kinds of artifacts were collected during this Upper Krishna Basin. Now coming to Sina Basin. Now this Sina Basin was surveyed by Dr. Sabale, Dr. Shivaji Shirsagar and Sheila ma'am. And this area they identified some 3 localities with again only 3 artifacts were found. And some reasons were given, like that early hominid, their tool carrying capacity, their movement and discard pattern, and some geological reasons. These could be the reasons why we find only limited artifacts at limited localities. So I surveyed, this was my Infosys Foundation project from Nadu Institute. So during these 3-4 months I could survey some area, and I could identify 7 localities from where more than 100 artifacts were collected. Although these artifacts are in secondary context, gravel context, but there are quite a good number of occupation was there, early hominid occupation. So this showed that this semi-arid landscape, because there is no reason why this region could have not been occupied. Because you have a number of sites in Palar Basin which is quite close, and you have sites in Bhima Basin as well. So this region must have been occupied, so that's why I tried to survey. So this kind of exposed bedrock is there. You can have channel gravels. Now these channel gravels in most of the river valleys in Upland, Deccan, Maharashtra are being exposed, or these gravels are like quarried because for sand mining or some mining activity. So these exposure, what happens that this lower gravel comes on the top. So these are basically disturbed sites, but you have artifacts coming out from them. These kinds of gravel and artifacts are found from this. Now different environmental situation, or in what is there in the rainy season, what is there in the summer season, these kinds of observations are also made. So these type of artifacts were collected from the Sina Basin, Upper Sina Basin. This ice keep I have just talked about it. Most of the large flake tools are there, cleavers are there. There are different types of patina observed on these artifacts. Incrustations are there. Mostly are highly averted. So another river valley is fairly rich. Now this was a very small scale work, so lot can be done in this region. Now coming to the Manjara Valley, now this basically is an area where lots of fossils have been collected. Some great work was carried out by Arvind and his team in 1970s, 80s. So that time they had put, I showed the system map. Now you can see in this red circle, Most of the sites are they have been reported as Mesolithic sites at that time. Maybe these could be microlithic or late Paleolithic sites. They were blade element sites basically. That time they were reported as Mesolithic. Now in Mazra Basin in middle and lower reaches, middle Paleolithic sites have been reported on siliceous material, but upper reaches, which the red area which I have marked, in that region no middle Paleolithic site was reported previously. So, and fossils were reported from number of sites, and these fossils have been dated by Professor Sate and his team of a late Pleistocene period. So, and in one of the paper he has also reported 3 artifacts, on basalt, and they had now this is the quaternary sediments in this region, which was drawn in 1981 by the Jayendra. So they have shown that the gravel, older gravel was basically buried. Now in recent years, what has happened is older gravel has been dug up for widening of the channel, because this is a drop prone area. So widening or deepening the channel, they have dug up the channel gravel, and this buried gravel has been now exposed. So basically that time the artifact which I have collected now recently might have been buried, now they are exposed. So this is just to show that Harvard site is famous for its fossils and has been related. And I have an experiment, which was again a very small scale exploration. 3 localities from where some artifacts made on basalt. Now this again is a problem if you call it Ashurian or Middle Paleolithic, but some Paleolithic between Ashurian or Middle Paleolithic, maybe late Ashurian, maybe early Middle Paleolithic, something like that has been discovered. Obviously all these sites are secondary and context, but there are hominin occupations, because there was always a question where there were only animals living and what were the humans going. So humans are there now. Stratigraphically, I am not sure what is the situation, but most probably, if the artifacts are coming from that buried gravel, the artifacts are older than the reported late Pleistocene gravels. So these artifacts could be of early late Pleistocene or maybe late middle Pleistocene. So this kind of observations were made. These kinds of artifacts are collected from these loose channel gravels. These now again on the top you can see these 3 artifacts were reported with claimed as flake, blade and knife. I don't know if they are seriously flake, blade and knife. I have not seen the artifact, only photograph is there. And these have been claimed as Ashurian question mark. That is okay, but I am not sure what is that, and there is no context, no scale was given, so I can't comment on that. But the other 2 photographs are where the collection I have collected, and in the lower thing is you can see probably Ashurian, late Ashurian, maybe cleavers, some cleaver flakes, some handles. And on the right side you can see the notch tools. Now notch and tang points of these kind of artifacts are very rare in basalt. At least in my observation I have not seen in any of the documentation or any of the records. So this kind of tang or notch points or tools probably are one of the first finds in basalt division. Now again I will not read this with more than 50 artifacts. So some last flakes are there, probable late Ashurian, middle Paleolithic, something kind of, but because it is in secondary context, it is very difficult to differentiate between that at this point of time. Further investigations obviously are needed. Obviously this region is heavily disturbed, so it is very difficult to try to put it in stratigraphy, but on the judgment of the field worker, it has to be judged. So now the latest work which I have been doing for last 2 years, which is very small scale work again, it is still ongoing. This Marne Valley again, only in the lower reaches of Marne Valley some microliths have been reported, then again early storage middle sites are there. So this region again is an important region because it is very near to this Morgaon region. So and it is again another tributary of Bhima. So Marne River was somehow not addressed or not looked into. So I tried to look into that and try to see if there are some Paleolithic, mostly on basalt, if there is anything. So yes, almost finished, last 2 slides. So this is just to show the floor that this basically you can see the dry bed. So in this dry bed you can find some of the Paleolithic or flakes and artifacts. There is some sections or some sections are exposed where some cobbly pebbly or mostly pebbly sandy gravel is exposed, and above that most of the time. Now this Marne term is basically for calcareous silt deposit. Now this term has been used by Dr. Pappu in one of the book. So this Marne river basically is full of yellowish calcareous silt, which is capping this lower cobbly pebbly gravel, which has yielded some basalt tools or flakes. So just to show again now this elongated flake or blade element has been observed, not for the first time because it was shown in this Raigad, Rana and Tapi basin. So these kinds of blade or elongated flake cores were collected from this lower gravel pebbly cobbly gravel, and on the top you can see this calcareous yellowish silt. This is a very common phenomenon in total upland Deccan, specifically in this Marne river valley. Number of microliths were found in this calcareous silt. So this can also be looked into. Now if that basalt elongated flake or if it is really a blade, You can see also, you can try to look into again this transition, or if there is any continuity from basaltic blades to siliceous blades. If there is any, we can look into this further. So these are some of the example of. Now again in this right side you can see some tanged or notched tool. Only one sample is there. And then again in the lower bottom you can see some elongated flakes or blades. Then there are scrapers, there are top at the top, there are cores, some flakes and some pointed flakes as well. So now again you can see basalt is very difficult material, even especially in road or updated texts is almost difficult to identify such artifacts. So that was the major issue I am looking into. So Palaeolithic artifacts now from 9 localities as per now I have collected from loose gravel context, one from agricultural context. Now loose gravel, it is basically a mixture of older and younger gravel. Earlier it was suggested or mentioned that this loose gravel is basically a younger deposit, which is not the case. Now assemblages consists of scrapers, simple quantitative flakes, hammerstones, cores. Now these are there. Further investigation basically is needed to confirm the chronology of site distribution patterns and particular situation. Now in this region, as until now, there is no bifurcation or action or large flakes are there, but those certainly doesn't seem to be of attributed technology. So what was the conclusion of ongoing work is basically small scale is a small scale, it is not like large funded thing or something. I am working on my own most of the time. And there are two river valleys which I have tried to look into archaeological cultures, Upper Krishna and Upper Sipaty. So mostly there are some critical sources in times and different environmental situations, subhumid and semi-arid. Two river valleys have been identified to potentially looking into late action on both sides, and some again if there are those really basalt blades, more has to be region has to be surveyed. Now, what is the channel gravel situation? The vertical deposits of channel gravel, the gravels, older gravels, are rarely available. Horizontal deposits of basically at a digital context is easily available throughout the upland. So basically, absence of older sediment which has been suggested over the years is really not really. So they are there, but in digital context. Artifacts are getting exposed over time due to different reasons like erosion, natural erosion, like digging for various purposes in sometimes. So these kinds of things have been observed. Now sites are secondary, yet these are important to identify the understand the spatial distribution in this region. What are the domain technological aspects which could be given, formation processes, roles of formation processes. These kind of works can be carried out through multidisciplinary studies also. Identifying artifacts of basalt homogeneous gravel is the most difficult task. So that is the major reason which deterred people from venturing into this region for survey. So that is why limited findings have been reported in this region for time. Artifacts of basalt are not always typical thing and elaborated tools very difficult to understand. Then the minimal secondary leaking is another feature which I have observed in basalt region, especially in regions where I have surveyed. Minimal secondary leaking has been observed. Now this again is showing the importance of regional survey looking at the area through our own lens, like in the sense what can be done in this specific region. Pre-investigations are obviously mandatory to look into this region. Now simple logic that more the number of sites, more scope of understanding the agricultural processes and other various things aspects. Now we have to review reconsider the Purana basic model or so-called unsuitable ground model because all over the world we are finding also on basalt, but in India, Upland, Maharashtra, Deccan region, why really less? So we are trying to look into that because basalt was widely used for making artifacts. Now we are finding it in secondary context, but they are there. Artifacts are rarely they are preserved in secondary context, rarely in primary context, and river gravels is basically the most common context. So basic observations are transition to assume to middle Palaeolithic at regional scale to be looked at, not possible at this stage, but possibilities there to move in this region. Now, raw materialization patterns is gradual or drastic that has to be looked into. Preference of large flakes is very common with the Australian. And the middle Palaeolithic, whatever I have trying to say that basalt middle Palaeolithic is basically medium size flakes. There are commonly there are scrapers, core prepared potential, elongated flakes and blades have been identified. Tang flakes are not used. This is you can read it. Basically, further analysis surveys, video surveys, and advice sites. Thank you. So, I like to dedicate this presentation to two of gurus in this geoarchaeology or Indian PhD. And fortunately or unfortunately, this is the week where both of them were born. Basically, both of them were born on Pappu or born on 18.
Yeah. Sandeep sir, he is associated with Adichanadu site and he excavated. In addition to that, he is well versed with temple conservation and primarily his work at Vepathu is very important. He has done several temple conservation and he is very knowledgeable in Vastusastra and traditional architecture aspects. So he will be speaking on this Iron Age distinctive walls. I think he means he's finding at Adichanadu. Yes, sir.
Sir, welcome. Of course, I'm thankful to the Professor of Archaeology for giving me the opportunity to present something to or share something because I am one of the oldest person here. So, young persons are one presenter. So, you should hear something from elderly person also. But the thing is, when we started our career, about 50 years back, I think most of them were born. At that time, there is prehistory was taught by R.V. Joshi to us, and pottery by so that is B.K. Pappu, N. Banerjee, P. Banerjee. They're all scholars. It's a problem to learn from them because you have to repeat. Whatever they say, they teach, immediately they ask the questions in the end of the class. That made us to sometimes to neglect priestry also. Because immediately you have to remember fathers. While we go more for pottery, priestry, Joshi was so great. Of course, we listen anything, we learn with him also. But anyway, that is what I want to say is, what I want to say is, at the time this when the pottery was taught to us, it was by B.K. Pappu. He used to raise a question about the mechanism. Of course, he taught us more about the mechanism, but he used to raise a question. So, differently, what's experience in South India? That is South Indian mechanism. In terms of the entire energy. And energy was opened many mechanisms in Muthamizh. He used to raise a question that is, was there any socio-economic divisions among the population of that time? Because we know very well that is the mechanism which was excavated, that is without this association. Of course, later they formed, without association also they formed the Iron Age monuments. But these monuments, which are more associated with the Iron Age, that is was there because if you take an analysis, that is if you see the burial pattern and also burial structure, it used to be a little costly even for a modern man. That's what they used to say. So was there any distinction between the population itself? That is a social economic problem should understand. So but they could not so it is I'm not going to the area part because time is very short. But area we find more that is associated with this and without this also. And still mostly later also formed. But at that times it was mostly concluded that is area this only like this. This will be that. Of course, even though all the I'm not going to the area context, to the Indian context, because time is very short. Of course, the Sri also later contributed much. That is for the study of these prehistoric burials, both in, of course, he takes into the Swat Valley culture. That is from Swat Valley was the Brahmic culture. There they found this late stones burials also. Of course, we visit here. But now some research is going on. I think they research are very happy because they research will know only this, not the burials. These are things which we have to know. That is why I am insisting. We should start body was the culture which we follow. That is what are the ideas of that time. That is things proceed. I'm not going into these things because this is all you know. But one thing is I will directly go to Deccan excavation. Because there are some that's, we are having many mechanisms, but each and every mechanism was different in type. Each and every mechanism can be attributed to a particular person or particular person only. How it is done, all these are the things I don't know, the different types. So now coming to the Ayyappan's and this Vaidhi Sharma, that in details the varieties of these mechanisms. And also some of them are also similar tones of the Mediterranean islands and Middle East. Of course, especially what we find in Kerala, of course, it compares with some of the Mediterranean. And Dr. S.P. Gupta substantiated such the in his monumental work, Disposal of Dead and Physical Attacks. It's one of very beautiful work which he has done. All the burials start from where this burial should have come in prehistoric context, not in historic context. Of course, S.P. Gupta put out within, that is, the practice of entombing many remains was continued practice in Middle European countries as back as 3000 BC. Because they started a group of burials, a dome, as a modern cemetery. They used to have it. Because common man, what a common man, they are having the burials, which are having some things that is a rich man can afford to. Of course, even in but even in our burials which we excavated also, we find a distinction from one burial and another burial. So is there an economic difference between the people, the population is divided. So that was the question Prof, because in European context, we get a similar burials that is put in groups. So the excavations, of course, one excavation which I did in Mahanad, that is in 1992, that opened the way. The practice of using the same burial pits for many minutes, for many centuries, that is the important thing. Of course, when you talk about the walls or about the common place for burial, it should continue for a long time, of course, in prehistoric sense. Then here for European context, it is, they are taking into thousands, 1,000 years, 500 years, 300 years, like that decade. Of course, also many hundreds of burials in the same pit. That is the thing whether we have not. That is the reason why the student also spoke, that is, there was socio-economic differences in the burials. We don't need a common, where common we know. The population is 1,000. That is how even 2,000 we take it. But in one burial, what others, how they bury. This is the question which was posed by Deccan author. Because you can answer, this is the Porkaram where he is excavated. This is Porkaram site. You can see there is only single burial where he found the ancient burial beads also, Tamilnadu bead, on which on the basis of that he made it about 300, 600 BC. Of course, there was a time frame which is given. This is a section. This is the beads which is served. Of course, chronology of Deccan copper made, of course, at that time, he gave it for 9 days, maybe about 300 to 600. Of course, now they are slowly changing, that is different. But it's, at that time, we could give a date because of that area. But now, Mangad is still. So, you can see, that is how we conclude this Mangad. Of course, it is also in Palar district. Of course, here also we are finding the barriers with the association of this stone and without the same way. You can see how the excavator started. In the area there itself, we got barriers, of course, with the ancient beads. This is the middle level. You can see it's different levels here. The same barriers, that is the pit. There are buried in 3 types as we found in Nadu. That is at that time, time was very short, time was excavation, and so funding was so small. We could not go for a massive thing, but within a small area we could find many things. This is the thing that is in Mangad. We can find these barriers, that is many barriers in the same structure. Of course, in different levels also. An upper level, middle level, and below this there is another level. Of course, on the basis of the Sipaty here, you can see the section of this, how they endomed the parts in different levels. That is the continued practice, because In the lowest level, we got about 900 BC, Sipaty dating. That means the upper level, there is ancient beats, maybe 300 BC. So about 600 years at least, this burial continued. That is the practice of burying, that is in groups, the same burial, which is not its words. The special characteristics of lowest level is area that the burial was used for more than 700 years, roughly about 700 years. And so we call it common tomb as found in Europe. This practice continued here also, but we see it in Asia. Of course, Roger was done many excavations, he has shown me, but at that time we could not see it in that particular area. We come to this article, which Tamil Actually, also we could find that is in different levels, different parts, how they made the parts which are finding in 3 levels. Because you may show better size, I think, because we are already. You can see. I see, within a small 6 meters, 60 to 60, I think. Am I correct? Meters. We will explain in detail. So we get 185 125 ounces. You can see. Most cases of disturbed condition in upper level. They go in deep, the middle level is intact almost, and now lower level it is not in better, but it is there are quartz that you can find here. This is how they buried the same pit. Of course, there is a story by Dion. Of course, what they have done in the 3rd level. That is, it comes in it carries with the Tamil literature. Maybe there was a practice which is there recorded in the Commemoration. This shows the section, the different levels there is. Of course, according to the story of the burials, why they buried the same place, how could they make the burial? Because the pit is there below. How they make again burial, that is make a pit or make a burial above it. That is the thing, they are saying it was fractured quartz, it was mines, originally mines. That is, it was used by the people for longer times. The lower level they are got on. Then in again upper level, because the earliest point of view, of course the section is there, even down the northern side you can see the section. We say it was used as a mine, maybe a middle of some wars. This is the early history. Of course, we are finding both secondary and primary burials. This secondary is an upper level, where we get to primary burials. The agrees, of course, Raghavan also agrees. He has made a sculpture studies of the sculptures, and then he came to the conclusions that different type of people are buried there. They may not be a same clan or same thing. That was his conclusion. Of course, he is more or less the same thing what Kalaignar has written in 1985. That is on the basis of the earlier restoration in Alexandria. So now the different thing is the lowest levels, what we got is it is on this date given by this OSL lady. I don't know whether Akhilesh is accepting it or not, because I retired not able to receive yes. But it was the date published by him in the science journal, that is OSL dating, which unfortunately is late to contact Guardia, where is he, we don't know. So that is the problem, but he has published it in the journal. So of course, he has given. In the upper level, you see what dating, see what that's totally. See what really buried for the socio-economic you see was these people were buried and the tomb was there or something was there. It was only for a group of people who could make it also, who could bury it also, and it practice continued like in independent days for thousands of years. Of course, the dates also, they are scientific dates. So this is the thing which I want to show in this aspect. If you excavate magnet, you will see. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir, because we will go for rest for lunch. And now, joint director will give the certificates for the paper presentation. I invite Dr. Shanti Pappu to collect her certificates and memento. Yes.
Sir, side. Light. Sir, side on.
Dr. Kumar, Akhilesh.
Light.
Dr. Jayendra Joglekar. Dr. T. Satyamurthy. Yes. Thank you. There are 3 more papers. We will meet at 2:45. I request the speakers to give the PPT slides before, just 10 minutes before or now itself. Thank you. Now we go for lunch and we come back at 2:45. Thank you. Not CBS hostel, they will guide you. Vehicles are there. You can take the vehicles and hurry up and come back.